The Project Tribute Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our nation's first responders. Our vision and mission is to enhance the life-saving capabilities of our first responders through raising awareness and funding for the life-saving work that they do. Our goal with the podcast is to be an educational avenue and a method for our heroes to express themselves. In the podcast, we will discuss various tough subjects. Some of the subjects may be uncomfortable or controversial. Our guests have the right to share their thoughts and ideas, and for our listeners to hear the unedited words of our guests. The Foundation's role is to showcase a diverse array of thoughts and opinions within the first responder community. If you hear something that you do not agree with, please consider reaching out to us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com and join our podcast. If you're a first responder and you would like to share your story, we truly would love to hear from you and learn from your experiences. Please enjoy this week's show, and as always, like, comment, and share to help us grow. You can find more information at www.projecttribute.com. Thanks and have a great one.
Hello, and welcome to the Project Tribute podcast. I'm your host, James. Good to see you guys again. We have a very special guest today. We're going to be talking about a topic they've been wanting to talk about for a while, and our special guest is
Andi Parker.
All right, Andi, it's good to have you on the podcast today. So, you haven't been on one before, so our listeners don't know who you are. Could you kind of explain, first of all, what is your relationship to a first responder?
I have been in a relationship with a police officer for 4 years now.
Oh, that's a while.
Yeah. I have a little 2-year-old next month, and
Awesome. Heck
one
yeah.
in June, a little boy coming in June.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. So you have a boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl,
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Make sure everybody out there is congratulating Andi on that. 2 beautiful bundles of joy into the world. So what do you do right now?
So I graduated with a bachelor's in social work.
Awesome.
I don't remember what year. That's bad. But
That's okay.
So I have a background in child welfare where I did like investigations and worked with families. And then I got my master's from OU and then went on to get my licensed master's of social work, and I'm a mental health therapist.
Goodness gracious. That sounds like a lot of steps.
It's a lot of school. Yeah.
Did you know that you wanted to do that for a while, or?
I knew I wanted to go to school just because I wanted to be able to always have a job.
Yeah,
and you got,
for sure.
Education's a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't really plan on leaving child welfare, and then I had a baby, and definitely changed a lot for me. So I needed a more stable job that I wasn't gone all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of what led me down mental health.
How long did you do child welfare for?
6 years.
That's a lot of baggage, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah. Child welfare is, I'm sure you can elaborate on it, but it's like its own beast, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I was 20 when I started, and I started as a part-time employee all through college. I worked child welfare. So that's all I knew how to do for.
Were you, now is child welfare is only through the state, right? Or
no, the tribes have their own,
is that who you did it through?
No, I actually did I got a full ride scholarship on for my bachelor's degree. And I did a dual internship. So I was able to work with a tribe for a semester and the state for a semester. So I kind of got to learn.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
wow.
They sent me to Alaska for 2 weeks. It was really cool.
What?
Yeah.
I have always wanted to go. So I've been to Alaska multiple times, but I kind of want to live in Alaska, but my wife's like, hell to the no, that's not going to happen.
It's cold, yeah.
What part of Alaska did you go to?
I spent 2 weeks in Anchorage, and I got to
That's
kind of
so cool.
experience, because they obviously have more tribes than anywhere else in the world. And they've sued the United States more than anywhere else in the world. So their Indian child welfare over there is huge.
Really?
So I got to experience that whole system and see it face to face. So it was really cool.
Yeah, you guys, we work pretty close hand in hand with child welfare specialists. Me being a police officer and other first responders usually do as well, because the nature of the job, sometimes we're dealing with juveniles. And every child welfare specialist I've ever talked to, it's a tough job.
It is, yeah.
And usually when you're dealing with parents, if it's usually not a positive interaction, I feel like most of the time. So you have to deal with a lot of like confrontation and everything.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to do anything like that?
Probably like every day of my life.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it was so funny because I was like really shy and timid when I started there. Like
Probably
I
like bold now,
I had
huh?
no idea what I was getting into. Like I
No.
was shy, didn't like confrontation. I was like, I don't want to get yelled at. And then
Yeah.
a couple of years after that, I was pretty tough. I mean,
when you got to think you're interacting with and potentially taking custody of people's kids, and those kids need to be in a safer place. But that parent or guardian or whatever at the time is like, they're understandably going to be argumentative or whatever, what have you, because even in the wrong, they're like, my kid, you know what I mean? So,
and I definitely got to experience like both sides of the coin. Like I did removals, and then I also worked permanency, which is where you have a removal and you try to get the kid home.
Oh, okay.
Which was way harder than taking a kid because you have to deal. I mean, when you go in and do a removal, you do the removal, you go to court, you're done.
Yeah.
When you have a permanency case, you have to look at that family and say, how do I fix this? How do I get this kid home?
Yeah, there's usually steps that are created, right? Like they've done like safety plans and stuff like that. The ones that I've been on, usually it seems like, and this is anecdotal experience, but some of the ones I've been on, and this is nothing against the great people that work in child welfare, but sometimes I'm like, God dang, it seems like it takes a lot to take a kid out of a home.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Like there's all these, for lack of a better word, all these chances that the family gets. And I guess I understand that, but sometimes I see like pretty drastic situations and I'm like, dang, are we still going to give this person a safety plan?
Yeah. Like I know my interaction with law enforcement, like I took time to explain it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I have to go to court and say, I meant this, and this, and this, and this kid's unsafe.
I see.
But a lot of workers don't like take the time to explain it, so you guys don't get it.
Yeah. And to their credit, sometimes it's like either a pretty hectic situation or they have like, there's not a lot of staffing. They always seem like they're short. So they have, a bunch of cases that are already piled up and waiting. So, if they had more staffing, they could probably dedicate more time to each individual case. It's a mess.
And like, I know kids hit different
when
you're in law enforcement. You guys don't deal with child abuse all day, every day. And
no,
that's what we did. Or that's what I did anyway. Like it was literally day in and day out of child abuse and neglect cases. And I would work with like,
it's hard, man.
Yeah. So when I would roll up on something, I would be like, okay, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
But for you guys, you're like, wait a minute, this is
this
is terrible.
That's a great point. Cause usually if we're getting called and a child is involved, it's something, cause you mentioned you have kids, I have kids as well. And you just kind of think like, it's different when you have kids. Cause you're like, oh my God, like if this happened to my kid,
I didn't think
like,
it was going to
earth,
matter. Like I will never forget this conversation. I had grown up at DHS. Like that's what I had done. I got my degree and I was about to have my baby. And I talked to a guy that, he was a child abuse detective and I'd worked with him for years. He said, it's going to be different when you have your baby. I was like, no, it's not. Like I'm still
He's
tough.
like, yes, it will.
Yeah. I was like, I'm tough. Like I've been doing this for years. Like it's going to be fine. He goes, no, it's different.
Yeah.
And it sure was.
Heck yeah,
it just
every situation you're like, oh my God, what if my kid was in this situation?
Yeah. Like I remember I was working CPS and I had a non-organic failure to thrive infant.
Yeah.
So starving baby.
Oh
and
my God.
I'd worked like a million of those.
How young?
Same age as my daughter.
Oh my God.
He was like 3 days older than my daughter.
Wow.
And I remember I was like, I'd had like it was like 7 p.m. and I was like, I'm going to the hospital, check out this baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably nothing. Like they're overreacting. And I get there and oh my God.
Bad, huh?
Like I changed his diaper. I fed him, like tears in my eyes. I was like, I can't believe this. Like,
yeah.
And the amount of laid into those parents that I did was not.
Oh yeah.
It was just emotional at that point. It wasn't, because like I just kept thinking about my kid.
Yeah.
And like what I would do if my kid looked like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it definitely impacted me.
And it's hard to describe, like, unless you're a parent, because you're just like, you're just like, how could this, like, Like, how can you do this to your kid, right? And, I mean, I know there's a bajillion different circumstances and situations, but I don't know. It's just like when you have your own kid, you're like, you always have this feeling like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure my kid's okay, right? So I don't know. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to see and deal with. Especially like sexual stuff with children too. Those are really tough.
Those are definitely not. And that's another connection I had with law enforcement was I feel like I've worked with like every agency in the state at least once. But I had some phenomenal detectives that I worked with, hand in hand on these cases. We would do things together. And then I would have like the patrol guys that would call me and they'd go out with me. And it's nice to have that support.
Yep.
And they would call me with questions. I could call them with questions. So, not only do I have a partner that's in law enforcement, but I have like tons of friends that I've been able to make connections with, and those guys and girls are just amazing. Like I probably wouldn't have made it out of some places alive if they hadn't been there. So
heck, even when I'm out on patrol, we get the occasional what's it called, agency assist, to where I'll be a person with DHS or something, and they'll be like, hey, can you tag along? This house is kind of sketch. I don't know how they're going to react, whether they're doing just a checkup or removal, or somebody reported something, so they're just kind of doing a welfare check, whatever, what have you. So some situations they're not super comfortable with because they're not armed or anything like that.
Like we couldn't have, like,
you guys can't even have body armor, can you?
No, pepper spray, nothing.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
Yeah, it was. And like it's the same houses you guys go into, it's like the same people.
It is.
And
it literally is.
I didn't call law enforcement a whole lot just because I felt like sometimes it escalated it. If
it depending on the person, it absolutely can. And for those of you listening, what that means is basically some people have, because of their history with law, and it's always law enforcement, right? Like, I mean, let's just say how it is. It's not first responders, it's law enforcement, because out of all the first responders, law enforcement is the one that when they interact with somebody, sometimes, maybe the majority of the time, it's probably a negative interaction. Not in the context that the officer is being rude or mean or something like that. It's just, if you're going to jail, if you're being written a ticket, if your child's getting taken away, if you're getting charged with a crime, whatever, that's a negative situation, right? I mean, somebody's not going to be happy that they're getting arrested or something like that. So somebody that may have had run-ins with law enforcement before doesn't like us. So when they see us, they automatically get agitated, or their senses get heightened. They shut down, whatever, what have you, right? And so I try to make a point when I go in on something like that. I like before I even go in, I'm like, what's the situation? What do we have here? Do I need to be, hey, you sit here, listen to what she's saying, don't say anything rude? Do I need to be not aggressive, but like, this is how it's going to be done in a polite way? Or do I need to be like, nice guy, right?
I was usually bad cop, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt kind of bad. I had
this is how it's going to be.
I had a reputation with the law enforcement I worked with. They're like, oh God, it's Andi again. I'm like, oh
God,
it's about to be a mess. Yeah.
Go ahead and get me another unit out here.
Give me some backup. I actually saw them almost shoot somebody one time. Like,
oh my goodness gracious!
I get called out at like 3 a.m, and I go out, and this lady has a baby in a stroller. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
So we like take her home, and
outside, just
walking at like 3 a.m. with
wow.
the newborn. Yeah.
What on earth?
So we take her home, and this baby daddy was bad. I mean,
yeah.
It was bad news. And they thought he was armed, but we hadn't seen him in a couple days. Like, nobody had seen him. And he just like jumps out of the back of this truck.
What?
And they like throw me behind him and like pull their guns out. And I was like, oh my God.
You're like,
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, 3 a.m. I'm about to get shot.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
do I love my job?
Gosh, I can't say enough though. Like, all the people I saw, like the way that most law enforcement dealt with that, because like it was hostile at the gate. Like, they were like, oh my God, blah, blah. And these guys and girls like just really did a good job of like building that relationship and like being respectful. And
You have to.
yeah, and some people aren't able to do that. Like,
no, they're not.
They're not able to like let it roll up like it's not personal. Like,
no.
So,
And I will say that does go for both sides.
Yeah.
Both sides, even on the citizenry side. And this is a good learning point. Anything that we do, like if we're, writing you a ticket, arresting you, we're there on a welfare check, we want to have as much of a positive interaction as we can. Nothing's personal. And if somebody is taking it personal, then they need to find a different career.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I've seen so many situations from years of being in law enforcement where things can escalate unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And it could be the smallest thing, like just something, the way that you say something, or maybe the person that you're dealing with says something to try to get under your skin and you let it get under your skin too much, right? So you gotta have thick skin, but you also have to be polite.
Yeah.
You
It's
don't,
a hard balance because
you
have
can be
to-
stern and have a command presence and stuff without being a jerk.
Yeah.
So I know where you're coming from,
Mhm.
because I've seen it myself. But it, I don't envy you guys. Do you still miss it at all, or?
I have times that I do, like, I think about it, I'm like, man, I really wish, or like I talk to a coworker and they're like,
Mhm.
I got this, this, and this. I'm like, "Ugh." I miss the adrenaline and action.
Yeah.
Mental health is still like really interesting. And
For
like
sure
it's
it
never
is.
like I just can't do the same day over again.
Yeah.
Like I can't like
Well, I mean, surely you don't. I mean, like right now, what's a normal day in Andy's job right now?
oh, it just depends.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I usually I do like some work in the schools, like I go see kids, but I primarily work with like teenagers. So that's
Like young teenagers or like almost adult teenagers?
I see kids and adults. So I kind of get
Oh,
to
okay.
experience both, but I work with a lot of teenagers, so you never know from day to day what that's
No, you really
what that's
don't.
going to be like.
I mean, we live in a small town too,
Yeah.
and it's still.
I'm actually able to see. I do virtual services, so I can see people like all over Oklahoma.
Oh,
which is kinda
seriously?
cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Hey, that's pretty cool.
Since COVID happened, that really opened a lot more possibilities with mental health, like trying
Yeah.
to get people services.
Yeah.
So we utilize telehealth a lot. And
Is
it's
that
really nice.
iPad work and stuff? Or?
Yeah, computer, iPad, phone. Yeah.
Okay. What do you go through Grand Lake, or who are you through?
I'm with Alliance Mental Health.
Alliance.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I've been with them for like a year and a half.
Do they partner with Grand Lake at all, or are they their own
We're
entity?
kind of our own little. We're smaller. We're a lot smaller. So,
Okay.
Grand Lake's kind of the big dog.
How do
mental
you guys
health.
give people services?
We do in-person services.
Okay.
We go in the schools. You just kind of find us online, fill out a referral, and we get you started.
Are there anything? So somebody would just go to your website.
Patient referral, yeah.
Patient referral.
We take a lot of insurances and Sooner Care, Medicaid.
Do you guys do you guys send people iPads, or is it computers, or?
No, Grand Lake that's actually a pretty big grant they got for the iPads, which I think is great. I've worked with Grand Lake multiple times over my life, so I appreciate them and all that they do. But we kind of just we have a smaller caseload. Like I usually have like 30 clients that I try to see every
Gotcha.
week.
Okay.
So it's more
how do they communicate virtually then?
We use like the computer, like webcam.
Okay.
Because I like to have like.
Can they do it on their phone? Is there like an app or something?
Yeah,
maybe
you can just we use Google Meet, so you can just download Google Meets and use that. And we used to be able to do like telephone calls, but since the COVID funding is gone now, we can't do that anymore.
Interesting. Okay. And the reason why I keep bringing up iPads to those that have never had that kind of interaction, usually when we go on a welfare check or something like that, and it's somebody that's in some kind of mental crisis, in our state, in Oklahoma, like you said, the big dog's Grand Lake. So we all have most departments, if not every department in the state by now. I'm sure there's some that probably don't because of funding, but most people, to my knowledge, have iPads. And so when they have a welfare check or something like that, we'll first talk to them and we'll try to establish what's going on. Do they need, are they in crisis? Are they a threat to themselves, somebody else? What's going on with them? Is something that maybe we can solve, or do we kind of feel like we need to get Grand Lake involved? If we do, or they would like to speak to Grand Lake, because usually we'll just ask, would you like to speak to, therapist at Grand Lake? If they say, yeah, we'll just bust out an iPad, click one button, and it'll dial to it doesn't immediately go to a therapist, I don't think. Like somebody underneath a therapist first, just to kind of get a quick, because it's kind of like an in the field type call. Yeah. You've seen it before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, to those of you that don't know, it's a quick in the field call. They talk to a representative for, any amount of time. It just depends on how long we can afford to stay out there, how serious the situation is. I've been on one where they talk for 2 minutes and they're like, okay, we got them scheduled with an appointment. Yeah. We're good to go, to maybe in a call for 40 minutes, them talking to the iPad. And then I get the iPad back and they're like, yeah, they say they want to light themselves on fire. So we need to ED on them and take them in.
That's such a hard decision too. Like
it is. Because I'm like, if they don't want to go, are we making the situation worse? But I'm like, they need help immediately.
I did a training recently for some kids that are like interested in law enforcement, and I like had all these scenarios of like EDOs, and me and
that's the go-to scenario, man. Mental health, mental health situation. What do you do in this situation?
I don't know that me and some other officers saw eye to eye on all that.
I mean, there's now
it's hard. It's so hard to make that decision.
It is, and I will say, as somebody who's been through CLEAT and been through training and stuff, who had scenarios compared to when I'm actually out in the field doing it myself. It is easier when you're in the field because you know that the situation's real. Mm-hmm. Where it's interesting because it can be like your instructor and another classmate, and the instructor's like pretending to be a schizophrenic or something like that. And it's hard to take that seriously unless you're actually in front of a schizophrenic person. Yeah. Because it's just like, okay, now I know to this person it's real, right? They're like saying they're seeing, they're like crying and in fear because they think that there's a person in a big dumpster truck ready to, squish them in a trash compactor. Oh. And they honestly believe that person's there ready to snatch them up. It's real to them. Yeah. So, I mean, I've just adopted the thing. I know it's real to you. I don't see that right now. Are you willing to do these things so we can get you the help that you need? I know it's real to you because I remember I used to always say, like, it's not real. It's not happening, right? And that would just set them off. So now it's like, I know it's real to you. I can't see that right now, but we need to get you help. And you try to kind of refocus them on the moment. Like, okay, what can we do to get you help at this time?
And that's the thing with like crisis work, like at all, is you have to, it's a learning experience.
Definitely.
Like your first one, the way you handle it, and then you look back years later, you're like, oh, I did that bad. Like, I did
absolutely.
I should not have done that. I should not have said that.
All the time.
It's all about like in mental health too. Like when I first started, I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. Like, I'm not qualified. I obviously was qualified, but I was like, I'm not qualified for this. I don't know.
Yeah, you always feel like you're not, even if you are.
And just experience, like.
And you go to trainings and stuff, or you get more experience, like you said, and just exactly like you said, you're like, oh man, I could have used that on that guy from a year ago. Right? Because I mean, if it's a bad situation, I mean, that sticks with you for a while. Yeah. Right? I mean, you got a guy running out of a house butt naked with a turd in his hand, and you're like,
for a little bit.
You're like, I want to go into, arrest this guy mode, but it's like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right. So absolutely. I have to have a certain set of safety gloves on because he's not in the right state of mind. He doesn't want to hurt me, but because of his current mental state, he's going to try to hurt me. He could, he has that potential. So it's a balancing act, man. But it's something that needs to be discussed, and people need to have experience in it. People need to be trained in it because it's something super important. Because unfortunately, it seems like mental health issues is skyrocketing.
I would absolutely agree with that.
You know, and I don't know if it's drugs or trauma or I don't know, but
I also think it's like awareness too. Like,
yeah,
there used to be so much stigma around mental health, and like you didn't talk about it.
No.
And now we're talking about it. So people are saying like, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
Like, which I think is awesome. Like, I think it's great. And
yeah,
I kind of put it like, you don't make somebody feel bad if they break their leg and go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't make somebody feel bad if they need to get help for their mental health.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And then, you know, I think another part of it too is that even something that may seem as simple as depression, right? Like people kind of have a stigma that that's like a simple thing. Oh, you're probably just depressed. I mean, something as quote unquote simple as depression can be, you know, a big deal. Yeah, and can lead to a pretty drastic situation potentially.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's not just anxiety. It's not just depression.
Exactly.
It's not just, you know, and we're finally having those conversations, which I think it's good and bad. I mean, but everybody needs to know like it's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're experiencing this, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Let's work through it. Let's figure out how we can get you help.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you do have to have a desire to help people.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have the what would the right word be? Empathy, right?
Yeah.
Not sympathy, but
empathy,
more so empathy. If you don't have the empathy and stuff and you actually care about helping people, then I feel like mental health especially can be the thing that you're going to struggle in because you can't the person's suffering, right? I mean, even if they're calling you all the names in the book, I mean, hell, I had to take care of a lady one time and transport her to a facility. And the whole time she was calling me the N-word.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like,
I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you.
I'm going to get you the help you need. You know, I mean, it was literally an entire drive of N-word, 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 cussing me out.
Yeah, you're terrible.
You piece of crap. And I mean, she would take a breath and then it would be a scream at the top of her lungs, followed by N-word, N-word, N-word. I was like, oh God, how close are we?
Yeah.
To Grand Lake.
It's hard too because like part of therapy is like challenging perceptions and thoughts.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody and you're like, so do you think that's really what's going on?
Yeah.
They may not like that.
Absolutely.
So you're going to take some heat sometimes. And
absolutely.
You have to be able to roll with the punches on that.
You do. You got to keep adapting. So I think that gives a pretty good idea of what you do and who you are. So you're clearly knowledgeable. You know what you're doing. So I think that was a great first segment. All right, guys. Well, I'm sure you guys had a great time listening to Andi. That will conclude our first episode. Remember to text Bleed Kit to 918-856-3977. That's going to be posted up for you to see now. Remember to please donate so we can continue to give life-saving equipment to first responders in need. So I do want to thank Andi for joining us on our first episode. We're going to be signing off, and we will see you guys later. Peace out.
This podcast is hosted by the Project Tribute Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our first responders. Thank you for listening. For more information on our efforts, check us out at www.projecttribute.com. If you're a first responder that would like to share your story, contact us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com. You can find us on various social media and podcast sites by searching the Project Tribute Foundation. 100% of donations are used to save lives while our retail store pays for any of our operational costs. Thank you again, and please be sure to like us, follow us, and share our foundation with your friends. Thank you, and have a great day.